Here to share practical defenses for real-world risks. Please welcome to the stage SHI Senior Director of Presales Engineering, Philip Armbrust.
So, we're going to talk about taking a practical approach to securing AI this morning. I am Philip Armbrust, Senior Director of Presales Engineering. Been security practitioner majority of my career, and really excited to talk to you about this topic this morning. So let's press on. Of course, we got a poll question here. So I'm going to wait probably 30, 45 seconds. Let's get this question answered. When it comes to securing AI systems in your organization, which fundamental challenges keep you up at night? Visibility, types of threats, traditional security controls. I'll pause here. Let's see what we got. Ooh, it's a tie out of the gate. All right. My money was on visibility. I'm going to be wrong today. Okay, AI threats are evolving faster than our security can adapt. Okay, I could see that, and especially hearing yesterday's speakers and this morning's, there's a lot of scary stuff out there. And it's evolving quickly, and it's accelerating, and there's plenty to keep you up at night. And I am going to talk about that for a little bit. First off, I want to talk about the AI security paradox. The first thing here being amplification. We've said it in a few different forms in the previous sessions, but magnified by threats and capabilities. They're all accelerating via AI. And so that's attackers and protectors, offense, defense. The most pervasive example in the field we're seeing is phishing. And I've heard some of the other speakers reference that. No more misspelled words or, I got phished a couple weeks ago. I'll go and admit it. It was pretty amazing, but they did a lot of profiling about me. All that's happening at scale. And to Jordan and some of the other speakers this morning, the basics, they do work. Security awareness training, they're not sexy things, but they've been here and they're going to continue, and they do work. And that's some foreshadowing for what we're going to talk about here in a minute. Also, abstraction, the complexity. What's AI doing? It's making decisions on my organization's behalf, on my security team's behalf. Can I trust those decisions? Do I know what's going on? We're going to talk about data models and what that looks like from a data scientist and a security perspective. So visibility is exacerbating all this. And then, of course, autonomy. Things are happening out of your control, things you don't know about. How can you prepare and get ahead of that? It's like you need to see around the corners you didn't know you needed to see around. But there's hope. So we're going to talk about some AI-specific attack vectors. Data poisoning, subtly or drastically, altering the outcome of a model. I think it's like as little as 0.01% of the data can be poisoned to give a drastic outcome of that. And then some of the earlier models, ChatGPT-2, you saw it with Snapchat and some others, there were some pretty bizarre things that were happening. And then I think the data scientists have caught up a fair amount, but it's still out there. Supply chain compromises. I think I read yesterday, there's something like 800,000 LLMs out there now, or models. So that's a thing. What's the model doing? Where's the data going? All those things are going, of course, without understanding what's in your supply chain, what you're inheriting, what you're trying to secure. It's tough. Adversarial inputs. So putting prompts into the machine, trying to get it to do tricky things, trying to trick it, usually for nefarious acts, trying to interrupt service. That's happening as well. And of course, prompt injection. This one's highlighted bright. In my opinion, it's probably the most pervasive thing out there because it's just so easily accessible. And you can go watch YouTube channels about how to do this, and there's all kind of, the script kiddie term comes to mind where everybody's trying to tell AI it's going to hurt their feelings if it doesn't do something, and all these things are happening via prompt injection. But we're going to shift here a little bit because there is plenty to worry about. And we're going to start talking about some universal truths, some things that are going to remain the same, that maybe just need to evolve a little bit. We're going to talk about the human element. You've got traditional skill sets. Those need to evolve. Data science knowledge. I've been a practitioner 23, 24 years, something like that. I've learned more about data science in the past year or two than I ever imagined possible. Which brings us to AI ML understanding. This plays into the visibility thing. It's like, do security teams even know when things are going wrong? If a model is giving degraded service, is it the data scientist that needs to investigate? Is it data poisoning? Is it something else that's causing that degraded service? All new questions we need to figure out how to answer. And of course, with that, the ecosystem risks are evolving as well. I just talked about the 800,000 models out there, third-party models, APIs, platforms, open source components. My intent up here is not to add to the FUD. I think there's plenty to keep us up tonight. My intent here is to give you some hope in a second and see how organizations are getting ahead of this in the field. So let's talk about that. There's some universal truths here. They were here long before AI showed up. And they're going to continue to be here once we get through the hype cycle and AI is operationalized and we all have a better understanding of it. But let me talk about a couple of these for a second. Visibility. And now, organizations, we're all still struggling with this. My point of these challenges are, you really need to take a retrospective look at your organization and how have you handled these challenges in the past. If you don't have visibility to, say, shadow cloud, or back in my day, shadow mainframe, I don't know if that was a thing, but you get the concept. If you were struggling with that and you haven't closed that gap, you're probably going to struggle with it now. Same with changing threats. Looking at the risk profiles and determining what is a threat to me. I love Jordan's talk earlier. I'm going to paraphrase something I took away from it, but it was essentially, we can get very distracted by, the threats I just showed you, the threat vectors, and how that can happen. And we're all humans, we're problem solvers. We want to jump into how do I solve that problem, and what does it mean to me? But a lot of times we don't stop and think, is this important to me? Do I need to solve this problem? If I'm just consuming Copilot, do I need to understand all the ins and outs of an LLM and how to protect it? Maybe, maybe not. So there's an overwhelming amount of information out there that is very tempting to jump in, get educated, and understand how to solve problems. However, most of what I'm seeing in the field there's things that are being spun up in organizations that, yeah, all those things can happen, but the likelihood of them happening is very low. Which, if you think about likelihood, leads to impact, that's risk management. So, for example, risk management, I'm going to give an example of a conversation I had with a customer. We were rolling out Copilot with this organization and doing the test, and it had gone, the use of Copilot had gone through the risk management process of the organization, and everyone's comfortable with this rollout. A couple weeks go by, one of the pilot or test users worked in HR, and she was using it to figure out, okay, if I'm going to put a job requisition out on the internet, I want to look at the salary information of, say, a director in IT with 5 years experience. Goes Copilot, types that in. Well, what Copilot brought back to her was the payroll information for her organization that she didn't know she had access to. Okay? So in that instance, now it's opened a larger dialogue in the organization around data classification. I love what Rob and the group earlier were talking about identity, and I heard something there. It's like forcing the conversation we need to have. I would say it's almost forcing the conversation that we thought we had, but we didn't really have around data. And the elephant in the room for all of this for me is the data. So if you take that example, a few things broke down, and they fall into these challenges and capabilities of these areas. The use of Copilot and your data will test your data governance capabilities. It will test your risk management. It will test zero trust, your culture, your control framework. All those things you've been using as practitioners. They just need to evolve a little bit. 2 years ago when ChatGPT came on the scene, the common question we were getting was, do I need to create a special security function to address this? Do I need a new risk management team, a steering committee, just to focus on AI? And those things can be productive. But now, as this is evolving, the better organizations are leveraging their existing capabilities. And what I mean by that is either if you got visibility challenges, understanding how AI may exacerbate that, and getting ahead of that just takes a retrospective approach. So your organization how you've handled things in the past, what's worked and what hasn't worked, and that leads to culture change, shift in how you operationalize things, all those sorts of things. And I'm as guilty as anyone. I mean, working at SHI, we get exposure to new technology all the time, and it's so exciting. But with that, sometimes we can lose sight of these things. I would also say, if you look at your control frameworks or the things you've been using, an example here is risk management. The risk management framework for AI from NIST came out in 2023. I would say the majority of organizations have not looked at that. And they say, well, we understand risk management. We've been doing it a long time. This Copilot example is a great example. It was a checkbox. It's our data. Can it be that big of a deal, et cetera? So Zero Trust is on here as a capability. I heard Rob and the team talk about it before. It's a great North Star. Revisiting Zero Trust. Think about your risk profile, how you're going to consume AI and leverage AI. What does Zero Trust mean to that? So, and simplify. It's complex. Sometimes that can cause avoidance. It says, well, this is too hard to figure out. I'm going to go buy a tool, or I'm going to try and shift my risk to someone else to help mitigate this. That's the thing. So break it down into small parts. So AI readiness for security. There's 4 pillars here that we like to talk about: culture, governance, risk, and visibility. Now, what comes to mind for me when you're trying to shift culture is winning the hearts and minds of your end users and your organization so that you can all align to achieve a common goal. And here at SHI, a couple years ago, we embarked on a project called Project MindSpark, which was our ChatGPT-esque version, or sandbox, if you will, of ChatGPT. And it was a really neat exercise because it forced a lot of these questions and a lot of these conversations. What data were you going to use? Who's going to see it? What's the value of this? Is it useful? Can we actually get a return on it? And then one really neat thing that happened during that project is we did a citizen developer type setup where everybody got access to it. And then we had plenty of resources for individuals to understand how to use it. And including myself, a couple years ago, as I'm using it and thinking about how can I use this with my teams, what does it mean to me? I had to understand AI to a certain degree just by understanding the value of it, which helped me understand how to secure it. So, but once again, it took a retrospective approach and asking yourself these questions. And then, in my opinion, our MindSpark capability, it still pays dividends. I used it leading into this presentation. Review this. I mean, we've talked about the use of chatbots, and they're very productive tools. But I would say that exercise paid dividends in the areas of culture, governance, risk, and visibility to set our organization up for long-term adoption of AI. It wasn't a tool. It wasn't any whiz-bang thing. It was more so, as I stated, understanding what does it mean to me in my organization, how can I use it, how can I get value, which in turn allowed a larger conversation on how to secure it. Think about my Copilot example. That's opening up a larger dialogue in that organization and having a conversation they needed to have around data. So, the title of this presentation has practical in it, so we're going to talk about some practical stuff. First off, what you're going to see here is very similar to anything you've done in your risk management program. But the structure is imperative here because AI is new. It's just, you've got to evolve your existing capabilities to address it. And so here's a way to do that. So in the first 90 days, what we do with organizations, we sit down and talk about governance, risk assessment, AI asset inventory. And that includes uncovering shadow AI and all those things just to get a better understanding of what is the value. If innovation is great, shadow AI exists for a reason. People want to go test it out. They want to see if they can get a return on it, all those sorts of things. I think transparency in the culture and understanding that is imperative. And from that, obviously you can gain a control gap analysis. I harken back to the earlier slide I show you, data poisoning and open source and all those things. Those things can keep you up at night. But I bet if you go through this exercise, even the first 30 days of it, you'll sleep better at night knowing that here's what AI means to me in my organization. Is data poisoning relevant to me? Not really. And even if it is, at least I understand what it is and how we're going to get ahead of it. Now, once you go through that control gap analysis, then you can begin doing things with security architecture design. Now, security architecture design may sound big and fancy, but 9 times out of 10 is what I'm seeing is revisiting those principles and things that we've been talking about. The identity crew that was up here before, revisiting those conversations, doing things the right way well. I'm always going to go back to the data here, and that there's plenty of capabilities out there to help us all get ahead of that where they weren't there even 2 years ago. You've got all these new DSPM capabilities, things like data lineage, which is fascinating, and data ownership, and then now with AI data, the ethical use of data, and of course, can't leave privacy out. It's really a data problem on most of these engagements. So, security architecture design, there might be some fancy tech in there, sure. Lots of times, it's revisiting probably what you were trying to achieve years ago with data classification that turned into a compliance, usually a compliance exercise, and then revisiting that and saying, okay, we have a better understanding data than we ever have. Let's figure out how to secure it, which leads you to tools collection, team training plan. Now you're heading towards operationalizing it. So that's you're deploying your controls, establish monitoring, test and validate controls. Now, one interesting thing that is on the horizon is the compliance bodies. So, anytime we've gone through a change like this or a cycle like this, auditors take a little bit longer to catch up. No offense to any auditors in there. I used to be one. But those bodies are coming. Well, by doing this and getting in test and validate, all while putting yourself in a position to be able to demonstrate compliance and not recreate maybe some of the things we've done in the past where we've reacted, we fixed, we reacted, we fixed, and someone says, we'll prove it, and then we've got to go piece a bunch of things together to demonstrate compliance. So, key takeaways here. Secure aware culture. I can't say it strong enough. The tools will get there. The tech is there. There's all kinds of cool stuff that's going to help. But if you skip past the culture, those things, they're going to be Band-Aids. They're not going to be long-lasting or effective. I'll just skip on a couple here. AI lifecycle, is that relevant to you? Which part of it's relevant to you? AI-specific threat modeling, which part of that's relevant to you? Prepare for AI-driven incidents. Your playbooks, do they need to evolve? If so, how? There's plenty of literature out there now. There's also, if you look at MITRE Atlas Framework, there's their AI version, 14 phases of it. Talks about exfiltration, persistence, all those things relative to AI and Gen AI models. Very cool. So, and ultimately, you're going to focus on resilience and adaptability. So, how can SHI help? What we've been doing in the field is a couple things. AI readiness assessment. This touches a little bit on security, but it touches a lot on data. And it touches a lot on your use cases, your business use cases, brings business and IT together to codify these use cases, and ultimately sets you up for, okay, am I ready to be successful with AI? This also brings in our lab. If I'm going to have a certain use case or model, how can I test that? The readiness assessment will scope that out for you. Here's what I want to test. I want to make sure if it's not going to work, I want to fail fast and do something else. Security posture review. I think I said it in my talk yesterday. We've done like 800 of these. We've modified it for AI. So depending on your use cases in AI, very similar thing. And I think it was Jordan mentioned the CSF. I've heard it floating around a few times. CSF is your friend. It's easy. It's tangible. It's actionable. We take it. We use a CMMI or a maturity model on it, 1 to 5. Go through the CSF. Really great tool for helping the SPR that you may have heard about. That's based on the CSF. Security posture review, same thing. We're just modifying it for AI. And the course selection services. If you haven't taken the lab tour, take it. We have all the latest tech in there. And then we've also got a lot of briefings and workshops and things at your disposal as a pre-sales offering where you can go in and orient yourself to, how am I going to solve this problem? What does AI mean to me? How do we do this? The SHI Advantage. So 1,200 plus certified technical resources, not just security, cross-domain experience. So one of the biggest benefits of working with SHI is that we are security. We've got our Stratascale expertise, but we've also got other teams that partner well with each other internally, because all these things are connected. It's not just a security problem, it's a data problem, which leads to a business problem. So all those things together, they have to be solved in unison as a cohesive effort. So there's a code here on the right. Go check it out. We've got our 8 trends and threats landscape. It's a really great read. Talks a little bit about this, a lot about AI. All right, thanks for everybody's time.